Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge, and I've been talking Vanguard for a while, but let's do some Elestrals news, because I've been playing the game again, and Sunstrike reveal season has started. So today we're going to go through everything that was shown in the first look video that released on Sunday, Sunday, February 1st, and then we are going to go through a couple more cards that leaked in the weeks prior to this, well, basically what would happen is every week Dan would leak a card um, when he was doing his like Tuesday weekly casual stuff. Um, and then we will do some good old collection number sleuthing because there's actually quite a lot of information we can glean from that right away. So let's get right into it. Let us start with. So our focus divines for this set are Aries, and Solar, Hera and Thunder, and then Hephaestus and Aeolus as the old divine runes. We'll get into their starter decks in a bit, but let's just do a quick look over of what these divines do. So Aries is 1 solar. You can put an extra 3 onto it. You disenchant a solar from it to search for a Colosseum of Aries or an Armament of Aries. We'll get into this more, but based on what we have at the moment, it seems that armaments are going to be artifacts, and Colosseums are, of course, stadiums. And the one Colosseum we've seen is titled. So I would assume that we're going to get 2 or 3 of each of these card names. So there's probably going to be a pretty vast pool for this card to be searching. Search effects are usually pretty good on divines. Searches for stuff like stadiums and artifacts have historically been quite a bit worse. But we'll just have to see how the deck pans out. Even with the rest of the stuff that we have today, we just don't have enough information on Aries to really say anything too concretely. Hera is our new Thunder Divine. 1 Thunder to cast. You put 3 more onto it, up to 3 more onto it, and once per turn, you can return a Thunder from this Hera to your Spirit deck in order to enchant a Thunder from your Underworld to this Hera. So this is like over time healing. Eventually, this Hera will start like actually healing you up, compared to what you put on it. It can start doing this pretty quickly if you enchant a very small number on it. But then you have less on it for use for other things, as we'll see. Hera, in general, from the cards we've seen, has a gimmick where your cards get to do more things based on the number of Thunders you have returned to your Spirit deck this turn. So this is a key enabler for all of that stuff. And also a Nexus Bank, for any other effects that want to return Thunders to your Spirit deck without you having to sacrifice one of your creatures on board. Alright, then we have the starter decks. We are back to the dual starter decks that we had back in Firestorm. These were fantastic, so I'm very glad to see them back. It is Aries versus Hephaestus and Hera versus Aeolus. We have nothing on like the card list right now, so we don't know what the stable breakdown is going to be. We'll find that out later. Alright, so we've actually known these boss cards for about a week because the full art's leaked. But let's go over them. So for Hera, we have Imperial. Imperial's a 3 cost, 8/12. You can normal cast it with 3 Thunders if you returned 3 or more Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck this turn. So 3 Heras will accomplish this, but like we are already starting to see some other enablers in the Hera deck that will also allow you to return Thunders. So if you use 3 of them in the same turn, you get to normal cast out this Imperial. It's an 8/12, but it's effectively always a 10/14 because it has a passive effect to give all champions of Hera +2/+2, which is very, very big stats, like very difficult for people to deal with by combat. Even most things like Argoed up with a Necklace of Harmonia isn't going to do it. And on cast, you get to force an opponent to disenchant 3 from their field. So it's a Poseidon's Fury type thing, except like you don't have to sacrifice spirits from your side. You're just forcing your opponent to sacrifice stuff from their side. This effect has some problems, but like bare minimum, it's probably going to be removing at least one card from your opponent's field. And for something that you're just going to, it's just going to have a normal cast condition to bring out, and is already going to be a big body, that's like good enough. It does mean that there's like no real point to doing this, when you're going first and you open the combo. But I think it's generally better for cards to be designed that way, because it leads to less blowouts. Let's move me over here for a second, because I was in the way of Mr. Stratomoth. So Stratomoth is pretty cool. We'll talk about him a bit more later. We'll just talk about his basics right now. So Stratomoth is an 8/6. Pretty much like bare minimum stat line we really want to be seeing here. 6 means that like a Galaxy champ can't crash into it. And 8 is like big enough that like it's going to be difficult for your opponent to get over. All of your champions of Aeolus get +1 for each wind enchanting each of your Aeolus. And you can Nexus a wind. When you do, you can special cast a 1 Spirit Wind Elestral from your deck. That is very, very powerful. You can go into like Hydrake, you can go into Pegas. There's that. You can go into like Champ of Aeolus, Sorlet. There's a lot of stuff that you can potentially go into. The Aeolus deck is the one I'm most worried about from like not being good enough standard. Because in theory, Aeolus already has its Searcher. It got champion of Aeolus, Sorlet way back in Firestorm, and that search mechanism is not very good. You only get to search for your Aeolus when you win combat with Sorlet, and that's not great. And when Artemis got her focus set last in Livestream, they did not give Artemis a new searcher beyond the faucet that they'd already printed back in Moonrise. So I'm very worried that Aeolus is not going to get a properly good searcher. And if that happens, that is going to be a very big problem for this deck's viability. This Stratomoth is pretty good. And we've already seen some turbo lines for it that we're going to go over later. But its viability is really going to depend on how accessible Aeolus is to the deck. If Aeolus is not accessible to the deck, then those turbo lines just aren't super real because they are completely dependent on you having Aeolus. So this card, the text on the card is good, and we have a potential turbo line, but I think a lot of it is going to depend on if Aeolus gets given a proper searcher somewhere in this set. If it doesn't, I don't think Aeolus is going to be able to do much. I do not have much faith if it doesn't get a proper Aeolus searcher. Okay, let's get back over here. Then let's get over to the other starter deck. Here it is. It was earlier. Oops. All right. So this is Ares and Hephaestus. So the Celestial for Champion of Ares. Now, Champion of Ares Celestial is just baseline in a weird spot. Actually, let me just move myself up here. There we go. I'm not blocking anything up here. Easy, easy, easy. So Celestial Champion of Ares is already in a difficult spot. As we'll see when we get into the card, it does not have a mechanism of turboing itself out like Imperial does. And that feels important for a card with the Celestial name specifically, because it is very likely that any mechanism of turboing out the Celestial will be usable for the original Celestial too. And the original Celestial is a card that's really difficult to match. That card is absurd. And frankly, if we get more ways to turbo it out, then it is probably the sort of card that will be under consideration for getting hit. Because it's just a completely absurd card. Maybe the turbo method will be specific to Champion of Ares. That would be a way to get around this problem. But that is a problem that Celestial Champion of Ares is going to be facing right out the gate. So it's a 14/8 triple solar, sorry. That would be wild. If it would be returned to hand, you can disenchant 2 solar from a Stadium Rune or Artifact Rune on your field instead. So this is some nice security against Shield of Achilles. That's always very nice to see. But that's really all it does, and it's fairly expensive for it to do that. The only Stadium Rune we've seen so far only gets 1 solar on it inherently. So we'll have to see how the artifact and stadium runes for the deck end up shaking out all in all. But this isn't even like necessarily easy to get online. And while you have Colosseum with Varies enchanted, this Celestial can attack each opponent's Elestrals once each. So it can attack everything on your opponent's board. That's pretty scary. But it does still lose to a lot of like attack stopping. Like it'll lose to being dazed by madness. It'll lose to being prevented from attacking by Gorgon's Gaze. It'll still lose to no, it won't lose the shield. What am I talking about? It will not lose the shield. It will still lose to Tsunami. Like, there's a lot of stuff it's still going to lose to. So my initial impression of this Celestial is not very high. I still think Ares as a deck has some potential based depending on what those armaments and Colosseums do. But as a boss card, I am not immediately impressed by Celestial. And then for Hephaestus, we have Vasuvatuga, who is, of course, Earth and Fire. He's a 6/8. You can disenchant fire from your field in order to search your deck for an eruption or champion of Hephaestus and add it to your hand. That's very nice. Just like search yourself, guys, is, of course, very, very, very nice. And it can help give you some more consistency on like the small Tuga stuff as well. Though we'll need to see lines to get into this. I think Vasuvatuga's biggest problem is the problem that Vasuvatuga has always had, even in the original version, in that being an Earth and Fire means it doesn't integrate well with Small Tuga and the water side of the things that Eruption wants to be running. If there is some tool in the set that like allows it to ascend over a water, that would be a really big deal for this card. I think it would improve it a lot. This is a card that could be good enough just on like just on normal ascending, to be honest. But it'll depend. We are of course also getting another eruption in this set that does not have a burn effect. That will probably do something more proactive. So that side of the search also quite nice. And of course, if eruption remains legal, even at 1 copy, then of course the search for eruption is also pretty nice to have. Even just the burn thing. Like, just go, okay, I would like to burn you for your life savings now. Then its second effect is when you cast an artifact rune, you can enchant up to 2 fire from your underworld to anywhere on the field. So this is very good at like recouping costs, even more than Volcari's already enables you to. So that's very nice. And then you can spend those fires to pay for invoke rune costs like eruption, like original eruption or whatever the new eruption does. Like, we'll have to see on that. But like that is like an immediate use case for that. Pretty good stuff. But also it can of course also increase the damage your Elestrals are able to do by enchanting them onto an Elestral on your field. So you now have like 4 spirits on the Vasuvatuga and you're swinging in for a lot of damage. But notably, most effects of this kind say to your field. This is anywhere on the field. And I am pretty confident that is being done with purpose. I cannot see them making it do that unless there's a reason it's doing that. And I can't even fathom a guess of what would be like a reasonable guess. Like if we can guess some busted stuff that would utilize this, right? Or some like very situational stuff that would utilize this. But ideally we want it to be somewhere in the middle there, somewhere that's like reasonable, not too overpowering, but also something useful enough that you would want to use whatever card is actually taking advantage of this. So we'll just have to see how that shakes out. But just keep that in the back of your mind that there is going to be something going on with enchanting to your opponent's field. And we'll just have to see what that ends up being. Maybe it was intended to help enable Lavalith. That is a thought. Like, help enable Lavalith resting on your laurels. Maybe there will be like those sorts of effects in the new Hephaestus deck, where you get bonus effects if your opponent has more enchanted on their field, and this is a way to force your opponent to have more enchanted on their field. Yeah, that's a concept. That's a concept. I could see something like that being what it is. Those types of cards are kind of annoying. I don't super like them, but that wouldn't be like too unreasonable. So I could see that being what it is. All right. Next, so here's the Colosseum of Ares we have right now. This is Colosseum of Ares, the Battlegrounds. As you can see, it's the titled card. So it seems very likely to me that we're going to be getting multiple Colosseums right out the gate. When a player casts a Champion of Ares, they can enchant Solar to it. Um, and as I'm horribly misreading this card, that means enchant to the Champion of Ares. We'll have to see what use case that has. And the reason I make that distinction is because it also has the effect of all of your Champions of Ares get +1/+1 for each spirit enchanting this Colosseum of Ares. And you can't re-enchant stadiums. So at present, like, we would be dependent on Nexus thing to get more stuff onto it. It would have made sense if the on cast of a Champion of Ares you got to enchant more to the Colosseum, to increase the buff that you're giving. But we'll just have to see how it pans out. Investing more onto a stadium is always like a risky business because if your opponent overwrites it, you just lost all that. So we will have to see how it pans out. This also like lends itself very easily to Champion of Ares getting out of element stuff, because that's the way that that Colosseum of Ares is going to be giving better buffs than a Temple of the Sun would be doing, and of course also the fact that your opponent is less likely to benefit from it. Your opponent is going to have a harder time benefiting it from it. What else? There was one other thing. Oh, another thing I like here is that by giving this stadium focus to Ares, we'll see how essential it ends up being in the end. But in theory, it prevents Ares decks from just splashing in the Champ Nova Core package, because that package is extremely good and extremely appealing. So if we want to distinguish the Ares deck from that, it is pretty good to like give it a reason to not be on it. And the stadium limit does a pretty good job of that. So we'll see. The stadium side stuff will have to be good enough to be appealing enough to not want to run that stuff. But we'll only be able to find that out with time. Okay, moving on. We have Hera. So the additional card we got for Hera is Platypulse, Champion of Hera. It's a 2/3 that can be special cast from your hand with a Thunder if you also return a Thunder from your field to your Spirit deck. So this is the second way that we've gotten so far. There are no other ways we know of currently, but this is the second way we got that we can return Thunders to our Spirit deck from our field. You can only cast one Platypulse this way each turn, and your Champions of Hera get +1/+1. So notably, if you have the third method, like a second Hera, and you get the Imperial out, alongside this, it's going to end up as a 5/6, which is a very respectable stat line. It's also just generally like, oh, this is a Tad Puff for Hera. Much better stat at Tad Puff, and it only costs you 1 spirit as opposed to 2. However, it does require you to have Hera, and I don't think that will necessarily be a problem, because, like, for example, Hermes has had Carry On forever, and all you need to access the Carry On is the Hermes itself. You don't need to actually draw the Carry On like you do with this Platypulse. Like, a Ascension combo with Hermes is only 2 cards, whereas an Ascension combo with Platypulse is still going to be 3 cards. If it gets something on the power level of Locagon, then it could end up being a problem. But I think this will probably be fine. It's also like more useful for use cases outside of that because its stat line is just way better. And it's less expensive. Like, good card for sure, but I presently do not foresee it becoming the kind of problem that we saw with Locagon. However, one thing I do want to note is because you're returning Thunders to your Spirit deck, you may recall that Imperial's original Ascension line includes Signectric. Signectric is a 4/6 2-drop that can special send to Imperial from your hand or deck if you have 12 or more Thunders in your Spirit deck. So I don't hate the idea of going like special Platypulse ascend to Signectric and then Signectric into either the new Imperial champ or the old Imperial, which could expend a Thunder to pop a card on your opponent's field, which is also pretty good. So we'll see. Platypus already looks like really, really solid. I will be shocked if this card's not good. All right, let's move on. So we have a couple more cards here. Okay, so first we have a new Aphrodite card in Starbit. This is a 2/3. Your Starbit cannot be returned to the hand by opponent's card effects while Aphrodite is enchanted, and you can expend a water in order to special cast a Starbit from your hand. Let's go over to original Starbit real quick as just a refresher. So Starbit was a cool little line in Moonrise, where this little guy is a 1/1, gets +2 for each water enchanting it, and can Nexus up to 2. And when it hits 7 or more attack during your main phase, you have to ascend it into Starbit Supernova. And then Starbit Supernova was a 7/2 run drop that could not be normal cast, and when you special cast this Starbit with another Starbit's effect, it gains the effect. If this Starbit would be destroyed, you may Nexus all spirits from it. If you do draw a card, then it is destroyed. So that effect is pretty strong, but it had a number of issues. Issue number 1 is you had to run it with like Poseidon or like some other way of getting 2 waters onto the field for you to Nexus, and that like never felt great. It was pretty bad. But also this instantly died to Shield. Shield completely ignored this like floating effect that it had, and just wasn't a factor. So this champ Starbit is immediately in a much better position, because you can go, okay, I have this and Aphrodite. I go cast out Starbit champ, Aphrodite, search for Starbit Supernova, Starbit champ Aphrodite effect to special cast out the Starbit Supernova. It has its effect now, so it's going to move its water back to Aphrodite for me when it dies, and I'm going to draw a card. And also I can search for another one next turn potentially. And also it cannot be bounced. It cannot get shielded, so it is safe from that weakness now. So that's all pretty cool. However, Supernova is still a bit of a brick. But I can very easily see this being like a viable like 3/1 or 3/2 line in Aphrodite decks, in addition to the fish stuff that you're currently running. It gives you a really easy way to access a 7 attack guy to help get over some stuff. And Supernova is just generally like pretty solid. However, I think what would help this a lot is if we get a champ Starbit Supernova. Like ideally what I would want it to do is I would want it to like do like most of what Supernova does, but have an effect that can return itself to deck by expending a water, which is an effect that we've actually seen a couple times in a couple places in the live stream reveals already, as we'll get to. And a search for a Starbit. So that way, the problem with Supernova right now is that that card itself is still a brick, and even the champ Starbit requires a 2-card combo to do anything. So if we can like alleviate the brickiness of the engine a bit while also making it more viable for us to run multiple Supernovas, then I think we'll be in a much better place for this to be a viable thing for Aphrodite to be running. However, I think even without that hypothetical champ Supernova, I think a 3/1/9 is probably still pretty viable. Then we have Rhinymph, Champion of Hermes, my boy. He's finally here. Not terribly impressed by this thing out the gate. It's a 2/5. When activating your Hermes effects, you may disenchant wind instead of 2 winds. Dan mentioned in a previous video that there would be a card in Sunstrike that addresses the issue where Hermes is designed in such a way where it wants to have 5 spirits on it, but it only gets 4. And people were dreaming up some pretty crazy things for it, but no, it's just a guy that when it's on a guy that doesn't really do anything on the field, that has the effect to make Hermes only disenchant 1 instead of 2, which is still pretty solid. It's still solid stuff, but you already need to have Hermes set up for this to do anything. Then when a player empowers this Rhinymph with a Frost or Wind artifact rune, you can search your deck for a 1-spirit Wind Elestral and send it to the underworld. This effect is kind of weird. A lot of the Champion of Hermes cards need to be sent by Hermes specifically. Actually, let me double check if that was true for the stuff we got on live stream, because I know it's true for a lot of the stuff in Firestorm. Yeah, Aviath has to be sent with Hermes effect still. And in Firestorm, Spinosax can be sent with anything, but all it's doing is a Nexus. So that's not the craziest thing in the world. And it's all one spirit anyways. Oh, those aren't one spirits anyways. Carrion is like the main one that'd be relevant, right? And it has to be sent by Hermes effect. Maybe Dracodoodle stuff. Like you could do Dracodoodle stuff with that. But like basically at present, there's not a whole lot that you actually profitably get from sending a one spirit Wind Elestral with this effect. And there's not any artifact runes that you'd want to be playing for this either. On both ends were coming up dry. Now, of course, the original Rhino line had a whole gimmick of the Elestral becoming an artifact rune. So what I would personally expect is the Rhino sect of this line would be when it's dumped by Hermes, you can play it as an artifact rune. And then it does something as an artifact rune. And then we'll get at least something that can actually like do something profitable when sent with this Rhino effect, I would assume. But we'll have to see. We will have to see how that pans out. And then we have Havocup, Champion of Dionysus, another fully out of element line for a champ. Very nice to see. Her Dionysus tends to want to be on Lunar anyways because of Artemis's arrow. So this fits in really naturally, and I like the idea of like of the champion decks not being so monocolor and like having some stuff from outside of their element that they do want to be playing. Like Aphrodite already has that with the Magneros, so I like seeing more of that stuff. This Havocup is pretty impressive right out the gate. It is a 4/3 that when it destroys an Elestral in battle, you can special send it to Polar War from your hand or deck. So basically it's doing what Champ Sorlet did back in Firestorm. However, when it's in Rage, its base attack is 6, so it has a built-in way to help it get over stuff. It can turn your Thrises, if you're running it, into +4s, and it allows you to just use your Divine Rune for stat modulation, while also making yourself immune to Tsunami. Even with just the original Polar, which is basically just a vanilla 7/4 in this context, this is already pretty solid, and if we get a Polar that like actually does something, then even better. So I'm pretty jazzed for this card right out the gate. Okay, what's up next? All right, Dougie. Okay, Dougie's pretty crazy. So Dougie, it might be the card that gets Earthquake banned. So Dougie's a 2/5 Ash Rabbit stats. It's basically Ash Rabbit. When it receives one or more Earth, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the Underworld. Then you may expend an Earth to add a Earth card from your Underworld to your hand. So it's a more balanced Ash Rabbit with more cost associated with it. This effect is also limited to twice per turn, so you can't like spam it the way you could with Ash Rabbit, though like often with Ash Rabbit, like you weren't really getting it more than twice a turn. But there is a limiter there, and there's additional cost to getting the card. So this is in many ways a more balanced Ash Rabbit, but it is still very similar to Ash Rabbit, for the same reason that some Earth decks some Dionysus decks in particular were running Hopperu. There are enough Earth cards in those Dionysus decks that it's very easy to justify a card like this that can only grab Earths. You even have a counter rune you can grab in the form of Madness. And this doesn't have to grab back one of the things it mills. It can grab back anything from the Underworld. So if you see Earthquake early enough in the game, you can just use it as many times as you can enchant your Dougie. Like you just get effectively infinite uses of Earthquake, and that's insane. There's a huge difference. There's a huge power gap in what you're able to do with this card if you see Earthquake early versus not. So I would not be surprised if this ends up being the card that gets Earthquake banned, because it's pretty insane with Earthquake. Then we have Dugabus. This is his Ascension. It's a 6/7. When this is sent from your deck to the Underworld, you can special send your Earth Elestral to it. So it can send over any Earth Elestral, so if you have other methods of milling. You can activate it that way. And when you cast this Dugabus, you can target and destroy an opponent's Elestral. This is pretty evocative of stuff like Astral, and it's still pretty strong. You don't have like any of the like real consistency tools that Frost had. Like back in the day, you had Rise from the Ashes, of course, and Frostix also became like an essential piece in Blizzstrix. And you don't really have access to any of that stuff yet, at least, for Dougie and Dugabus. But this is still a pretty powerful line, and I fully expect that this will be seeing some play. Like both these cards are very, very good. Like even if you just like normal send the Dugabus, it's still popping an Elestral. That's still really good on a really good stat line. So these two cards are really, really appealing right out the gate. Then we have this is going to be the pre-release promo, Phosphocell Overcharged. So this is a new Phosphocell. We'll get to the new Larvacell later. But this Phosphocell is when it's destroyed, you can target and destroy up to the number of solars that were enchanting it. And when this Phosphocell is double solar enchanted, it cannot be returned to the hand and its attacks cannot be negated. Of course, that effect does not stop Gaze, it does not stop Madness, it does not stop Tsunami, but it does stop Shield. And that's what we really care about. We care about stopping Shield. So it can't get shielded. There are three main points that this has that really improve the deck over original Phosphocell. One, you cannot be cracked back on by your opponent simply casting a Galaxy. It has 6 defense. A Galaxy champ is not enough to get over it. Two, it cannot get shielded. Shield is the bane of a lot of these big Ascensions. So having that shield immunity is really, really good. And three, it is a good card to play out if you have the combo going first. Original Phosphocell, its whole purpose was clearing out your opponent's back row. If you had the combo going first, you could never go for it. You would never want to go for it because there was no back row. And if your opponent had out to it, you just invested a ton for actually nothing. On this card, it cannot be bounced. So your opponent basically has to destroy it. And when they destroy it, you get to target up to 2 of their cards and destroy them. Because you're basically always going to have double solar on this thing by the nature of how you get up into it. So this is a pretty substantial improvement over original Phosphocell. As we'll see later, the new Larvacell also marginally increases the consistency of the combo. I don't think that like this is a complete game changer. I don't think like Phosphocell is going to become meta off of this based on what we've seen so far. But it does patch a lot of the problems with Phosphocell as a strategy and make it work a lot better in a lot more situations. So I do this is pretty good. This is a pretty good improvement on that deck. Yeah. Then we have the Krata cards from the Clash Kickstarter, I believe. So these were by Skullmock and Distant Coder. So from Skullmock, we have Lotrax. This is a 2/3 fire Elestral. When it's in defense, Elestrals that are not fire enchanted get -2 attack and -2 defense for each fire enchanting this Lotrax. And Lotrax cannot reduce Elestrals attack and defense by more than 4. So this is actually pretty solid. This is effectively 5 defense against non-fire enchanted stuff. It's also effectively 4 attack. And then if you can get a second on it, it effectively becomes a 6/7, which is pretty good. Very big improvement over the last card we had with this sort of effect, which was original Platypulse. Like -2/-2 is like the kind of reduction that like makes this actually like maybe worthwhile. Then we have Distant Coder's card. Coder, what's wrong with you? Why would you put a card like this in the game? What's your issue? So Lumavale is a lunar solar 6/6. When a player plays a card with the same name as a card in an underworld, you can expand solar in order to negate that chain link. When you expend 1 or more solar with an effect or pay the cost of an effect, you can return lunar from your underworld to your spirit deck. This card is completely fucked. I'm not sure if it's going to be good, but if it ever is good, it's a problem. if this card is ever good at all, it will be creating the most toxic non-games you've ever seen in your life, and I really hate it. I also really hate how it like silver bullets certain types of decks, like Morfrost and Aphros. Like these same name decks are one of the like cool things that you don't really see in other card games. Like I like the interplay of names and titles, and the types of decks they can create. And Lumavale is a card that looks at decks that function that way and go, no, die. Why is this able to negate the cast of an Elestral? Who knows? I don't understand why. Why is it able to do that? I don't know. Was this necessary? Why isn't it once per turn? That's the real question I'm asking. Why is this not once per turn? This is extremely accessible because of Solar, because Solar has First Light plus Foretell stuff with Apollo. So if a guy sticks, you can very easily get up into it. It is not hard at all for Solar to access. Also, the cost you pay for the negation is Solar. And as you might recall, last set, Solar got a very powerful counter rune called Guardian of Light that negates an attack for -1 Solar Spirit. You spend a Solar Spirit on it, and then you heal 2 back, which, oh, look at that. Now I can feed that into more Lumavale negates. Solar is also the color with the most effective mill stuff as of last set. And what does mill do in the context of Lumavale? Oh, I don't know. It just sets up your opponent's underworld so that you can negate more stuff. Why is this not once per turn? Can someone please explain to me why this isn't once per turn? Why is this not once per turn? I hope you don't like playing 3-ofs, because the moment you play the first of those, you now have 2 dead cards in your deck until Lumavale is dealt with. Wow, I hate this card. I hate this card. I hate this card. If this card is ever good, I am going to crash out, or I'm going to be the one playing it to ensure it gets banned into the sun. Because I despise this card, and I don't think it should have ever been printed. This is not the type of card I want to be seeing in this game. I'll be honest, this single reveal really brought down the mood of like this entire first batch of reveals, because like everything else in it was cool, good developments. I like what's happening here, and then there's this asshole. Coder, why did you do this? Why would you make a card like this? I don't understand. I don't understand, man. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right. Oh, we also have Doxid. We'll have a bit more to talk about this guy later. But he's a 4/4, really nice stat line. On normal cast, you can discard a card in order to target another fire or thunder card in your underworld and return to your hand. So there's more stuff to feed the fire discard deck that has been developing. And this is a pretty solid piece. I think it'll somewhat depend on what Eruption does, because like, say for example, the new Eruption is like a removal piece. That would be really, really fantastic. You can use it to get back Thunderstorm. You can use it to get back Up in Flames. There's a lot of like potential really good stuff you can be doing with this card. And it enabling your discard stuff is also super, super nice. I like this card a lot. This improves the fortunes of like, because like we need what we really need for that discard deck to work is like a couple more ways to discard cards and a couple more things that benefit you from discarding cards. So this really helps get us towards that future. Okay, then we have the pre-order stuff. Then we have Organized Play Series 5. So they are completely changing how the series, how the Organized Play packs, the LGS packs are structured going forward. They are not going to be non-foil, parallel foil, stellar anymore. The stellars in every pack are being nixed. And instead, we are getting these cool gem frames. So, oh, that's from the last one. There we go. These sick gem frames. It's only going to be 2 cards now. Dan said in his own video after this came out, he clarified that it is going to be 1 spirit and 1 non-spirit. And I'm not sure if Dan said this in his video, but it was confirmed elsewhere that both the cards in these packs will be foil all the time. So that's cool. It's going to be really cool to have like pretty easy access to these cool hollow spirits. I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, that's super super nice. I'm very happy about that. That'll really get. I think that'll really get people playing at LGSs because like they'll want a lot of these. And based on the set codes, we can make a pretty safe assumption that all 8 spirit types are in here. So that's really cool as well. For the stellars, they are introducing reverse stellars into these play packs, organized play packs. We have a gem frame for Platypus as one of the reprints. And then we have where is it? We're getting another Cryoblast reprint. This is going to be our first time able to get Cryoblast in Holo, so that's really cool. I'm really excited about that. And it is going to be one of the, I think they said 6 reverse sellers in the pack. So we don't know what the pull rate is going to be on those reverse sellers. But the serialized sellers are pretty close to like 1 a box for the current tournament packs. So I would expect these to be like, I would expect to see like 2 or 3 of these per box at least. So that'll be cool. However, looking at this Cryoblast, I have the exact same issue I've always had with like basically every stellar rune they've ever done, which is I don't care about them because they barely look different. Like I don't care about having just a palette swap and some fancier foiling. I would really prefer if it was like full art instead, or like if it was a new art. Like this is not enticing to me to get reverse stellars, and like since the art is going to be available already in Holo at lower rarity, I don't see myself chasing that high rarity of the reverse stellar here. I will probably be moving any I get, but I'm very excited for this because wow, I want like okay. So for one, Holo Cryoblast really cool, Gemframe Cryoblast really cool. I'm also really glad that they're willing to reprint stuff in these tournament packs going forward, because in my opinion, each tournament pack should have like a few of the staple rune suite in them. They should be something that is going to help new players fill out their stable suite no matter what season they're playing in. Like the season 3 organized play packs with Gorgon's Gaze and PTA and Ambrosia were sick, but I want like 3 or so of the staple suite to be in every single one of these tournament packs. No matter how many times we repeat them, they should always be there. Some number of them should always be there so that they are always helping people fill out their staple suites. Encourage people to build more decks, stuff like that. That's what I really want to see with that category of reprints in the tournament packs. And then we saw the X of 10. This is Sulfuri. This is actually a new card. This is the first time the X of 10 has not been one of the staple runes. So Sulfuri. They're also doing the thing with serialized now for like all serialized, it seems like. Where for all serialized sellers, where they do the thing that they do with the prize cards, where it's here, like here right below the element symbols, instead of where the set code would be, because that helps it be more distinct, and also lets them still have a set code for them, which I personally really appreciate. So Sulfuri is a 10/6 double fire 1 thunder. 3-drop, of course. When it's in your hand, you can special send from your Elestral. If you return a Sulfuri from your underworld to your hand this turn, when you cast this Sulfuri or return 1 or more fire cards from your underworld to your hand, you can target and destroy a card. This is pretty alright. However, you can't. So despite the fact that you can special cast using taking however many spirits you need from the spirit deck, special sends work differently. Even with an effect like this, you can't just go from a single 1-drop with only 1 spirit on it to Sulfuri. I would personally think it should work that way, given how special casts work, but it doesn't. And it does kind of annoy me that that's the case, but it is what it is. So that means to get to Sulfuri, you need to already have the Sulfuri set up in your underworld, and you need a 3-card combo of like already having a drop on the field, or you go Noxid, discard Shelmet, get Sulfuri back. And then the Shelmet special cast itself, and then you can special send the 2 of them into Sulfuri. Which is, this card's solid, but it's not so good that amount of effort feels worth it. So I'm not super sold on this card because of that special send thing. If Special Send worked the way I personally feel it should, then I would be really high on this card because like as just like oh no, it's just a it's just a 2-card combo plus half soul fairy, so it's not that bad. But like I don't know. I don't know. You're like it's not something you're searching, so you do kind of need to run 3 soul furry. It's not super ideal. And it's very counterable. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we'll see more stuff that returns fire cards from your underworld to your hand, given that's a trigger on this, and we've only seen one card that does that thus far. We'll have to see how that all pans out. But I think so far he's solid, but I'm not super sold on it at the moment. But we'll see how it all pans out. And then we have the online store promo is Armadon. So Armadon, champion of armies, Ares is the searcher for Ares. This is a really good searcher. So it's a 2/5, but its stats don't really matter. You expend a solar and put it from hand to the bottom of your deck, and then you search your deck for an Ares or a Gardon. So it not only is a searcher that doesn't take your cast, but also it has an alternative target if you already have Ares. So like this is one of the best divine searchers we've ever gotten, just because it doesn't eat your normal cast while still having the alternative function. And then it does have an effect on the field of its position cannot be changed by your opponent's card effects. I don't see this being super relevant, but it does have a solid defense stat. So like it could matter, but like the way you don't eddy over stuff like this anymore. You Galaxy over it, and Galaxy does not change the position of anything. So we'll see if that effect ends up mattering, if it being on field ever ends up mattering. But the surge effect is very, very solid. It is unfortunate that it puts it back into your deck as like a dead draw. But that's a sacrifice I think that's worth making for a card that that searches your divine without eating your normal cast. And then for the LGS pre-order promo, we have Jolton, champion of Hera. This card is awesome. So this is a 4/2. When you cast this Jolton, you search your deck for any 1 spirit champion of Hera and add it to your hand. If you returned a Thunder from your field to your spirit deck this turn, you may find a 2 or 3 spirit champion of Hera instead. So you get to find any champion of Hera if you've returned anything, like with Hera's effect, which is not hard to do. You can also go like, okay, I will Jolton. I will search for Platypus, just immediately establish 2 bodies if I want to do that. There's a lot of stuff like this card is like baseline probably going to be really good because it's a searcher that is a 4 attack and it can search for more stuff. It can search for a card that special casts itself. Like there's a lot to like about this card already when we only have like what 4 Hera cards at this point. So really, really good right out the gate. Really good choices for these promos. I hope we see the Hera searcher sooner rather than later, because that does matter, and it's the only one of these divines we don't have any searcher for. So I hope we see it sooner rather than later. But that's it for now. This is the normal art of Armadon. It was revealed to us via Dan leaks right before the big release. Then we have Drakid, champion of Poseidon. This is the long-awaited Poseidon searcher. It's a 2/2 lunar. When you cast it, you search your deck for Poseidon, add it to your hand. When it enters battle, you throw it to the bottom of your deck in order to special cast a 1 spirit champion of Poseidon from your deck that is not Drakid. So this is all right. I'm not a huge fan of it right now because it's a 2. It doesn't have big problem. It does not have an alternative search target. This stat line with no alternative search target is really not great. Really not a fan of that. And then this trigger is at enters battle. So if you're on offense and you're doing it offensively, no problem. Of course, you will die super hard to Gorgon's Gaze. So be very aware of that. But okay. And also like PTA is also not super great for you. Because they can hold PTA for the new cast. But the other thing is because it's on enters battle, that that means, so this is like an upside and a downside. That means if your opponent is on offense, they will go direct after. So that can be an upside, that can be a downside. It does help ensure you'll have a body on your next turn. But it dies so hard to Gorgon's Gaze. Like, this effect has it put itself to bottom as cost? Actually, no. Wait, no, you can't Gorgon Gaze it, can you? You can't Gorgon's Gaze it. Yeah, it's too late to Gorgon's Gaze it. You die super hard to Pandora's Box. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of putting a 2/2 back into my deck that doesn't have an alternative search target. Like, that's really what it comes down to with Drake It for me. I'm really not a huge fan of that. The searchers that don't have good stat lines and don't can immediately convert into something like more real have always had a problem. And like a lot of the Champions of Poseidon stuff has been revolving around using Poseidon to Nexus to do a special send. And naturally you can't do that during the battle phase. So that's like an immediate problem with this search effect. I don't know. There's a lot of factors here with this Drake Kit that I'm just not a fan of. I'm just not a huge fan of it. And it's a shame because Poseidon really needed a good searcher. I think Poseidon really needed a good searcher because Poseidon is not a great defined baseline. And really needed the help of a good searcher. And this is, I don't think this is it. However, this does forecast that we're getting a new Drake King, so that could be something. And they've always been paired, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a new Eddie Kuribus or a new Snark Joblin for Poseidon. So that would be neat. We'll see if that happens. But that's all for the future. Then we have Larvacell Charged. It's a 3/4. It's much better stat line than original Larvacell. When you normal cast it, you can expend a solar to either search your deck for a solar charge and add to your hand, or special cast a Larvacell from your hand or deck. So the solar charge mode is pretty slow. But special casting out a Larvacell means that it effectively acts as copies 4 through 6 of original Larvacell, and it still does help set up your combo with solar charged when you search it that way. So like that's not the worst thing in the world either. And then your Elestrals get +1/+1 for each solar enchanting them. So it's like it's Temple of the Sun on the field. And that can help like with Phosphocell stat line and stuff like that. So like it's pretty alright. It definitely does improve the consistency of the Phosphocell combo. Improves that deck in general. But I don't think it improves it that substantially. Like it makes it more consistent for sure. But it is still pretty fragile combo, all things considered. Then we have Nimbug, Champion of Aeolus. So this is a 3/1. You can expend a wind and discard this Nimbug in order to Nexus a wind. When it's put into your hand without being drawn, you can search your deck for a Sirikun, a Stratomoth, or a Bag of Winds and add it to your hand. So baseline, really appreciate that this does not have to be added by Aeolus effect specifically. I've really hated that line of text on the Aeolus and Hermes cards. So very glad to not see it here. This is how we turbo into Stratomoth. So basically there's two lines. If we have a wind guy and that any wind guy survives, we can then go, okay, we play Aeolus, we Aeolus effect, search for Nimbug, we Nimbug effect, search for Stratomoth, discard Nimbug, Nexus a wind from Aeolus to our wind guy, then we normal send our Stratomoth over the wind guy. There's a 1-card line, actually, that involves 2 cards. So it would be, we would play Aeolus, Aeolus effect, search for Nimbug, Nimbug effect, search for Stratomoth. Then on our next turn, we would Aeolus, search for Galaxy effect, special cast itself. Then we Nimbug discard, Nexus a wind from Aeolus, which is our last spirit on Aeolus, to Galaxy now has 2 spirits on it, and we go into Stratomoth. Now, in that case, we would not want to be going into Stratomoth Champion unless we have something else to Nexus to, because we have spent all the spirits on Aeolus, and Champ Stratomoth doesn't do anything if we can't Nexus. However, original Stratomoth is a pretty good card. Let me pull it up real quick. Let us pull up original Stratomoth. Where are you, buddy? Here you are. So original Stratomoth is a 9/5 that gets +1 attack for each Nimbug and Sirikun on your field or in your underworld. So it's going to be 10-5 baseline. And you can expend a wind in order to return each of your opponent's runes to their hand. Bouncing your opponent's entire back row is really, really strong. So I think there's a very real world where this ends up making the cut in Aeolus deck because of its capacity to be, okay, we've spent all of our Aeolus spirits to get to Shroudmoth. Here's a Shroudmoth that doesn't need us to be Nexusing to do something. And what it does is very, very powerful. It will force out back row constantly. It will make itself completely safe from shield all the time because they're never going to get to keep shield set on the field. And it makes it really hard for your opponent to stop you from snowballing out of control if they don't have like an immediate out to the Stratomoth. Meanwhile, you still get to have your back row. So it's very powerful. I think there's a very real world where this Stratomoth combo stuff revolves around this card and not Champ Stratomoth. But Champ Stratomoth is also very, very powerful if you have the Nexus Bank for it. There's also the possibility of using Tower of Winds, because Tower of Winds is able to get you pretty quickly up into any wind 3-drop. So I could see that being a version of reality. Increase the number of cards you need for the combo, but it's another way to get up quickly. So that could be something there. But the long and short of it is that Nimbug is a really powerful enabler for any Shroudmoth stuff. Really helps like you turbo up into it. And that's without seeing any new Sirikun or Bag of Winds that we might get. Maybe we tech one of original Bag of Winds, because original Bag of Winds is like, hey, I can't be targeted by runes, which is pretty solid. Alright, let's move on from there. What else do we have here? Nothing that we haven't already gone over. Okay. Okay, let us talk about set codes. We're already at 56 minutes. I'm going to try and make this fast, but I don't know how fast I can make it. Basic rules to lay down. So, how are cards organized in Elestrals? So the first 8 cards, always spirits. Cards are organized based on the order of the elements, which goes earth, fire, water, thunder, wind, frost, solar, and lunar. Within those elements, Elestrals, so it's all the Elestrals first, and then all the runes is how it always goes, and then all the full arts after that. Within their element, Elestrals are organized in 2 ways. Way number 1 is that all the champions will come before all the non-champions. It doesn't matter if they have a different title. If it is a non-champion, it will come after. As an example of that, we can look at Firestorm, which had multiple instances of Escape from Tartarus. Here's Rataria right after the champions. However, if we look at... actually, no, I'm a liar. I'm a liar. Am I a liar? Actually, no. I just lied to you. The non-titled cards definitely come first. Is that really how it goes? I could have sworn that wasn't the case. Yeah, that doesn't give us anything. Alright. Ignore what I just said about okay, so it's champions, then other titles, then non-title cards, is how it goes. Within the champions, what we have discovered as a result of Livestream is the champions are organized based on the divine they are a champion of, which again goes in order based on element, and within each element it is ordered based on which divine came out first. So like for example, here in Livestream's water cards, we had champions of Hephaestus, champions of Poseidon, and champions of Aphrodite. So because fire comes before water in the element order, the Hephaestus champions came first. Then the Poseidon champions, because Poseidon is the original water divine, and then Aphrodite, because Aphrodite is the new water divine. And so on and so forth. Then within those structures, Elestrals will be ordered based on the length of their ascension line. So a 3 3-stage ascension line comes first, then a 2-stage ascension line, then a one stage ascension line. And then for runes, so for runes, it's typically going in an order of divines always come first. Then we can look to Firestorm for this. Yeah, so it's divines always come first. Then it is artifacts, then stadiums, then folks, then counter runes. Again, element order is used, and Almis come at the very end. The one exception to this is if it is tied to a focus divine. We have seen this in the Firestorm Fire runes in particular. The cards associated with the focus divine came first in this case. Did that hold true in Livestream's Lunar stuff? Because they got a lot of... No, not quite. So that rule might have been a Firestorm only thing. It's hard to say. The Firestorm Fire runes are a bit weird, a bit strange, don't make a whole lot of sense the order they're done in, but still, that order of Divine Stadium, Divine Artifact Stadium, Invoke Counter should generally hold true. And then after that we have Full Arts, and Full Arts again go based on the pre-established order. Yeah, so like, for example, Ursaden came, why was Ursaden here? Okay, this Ursaden positioning actually doesn't make any sense. Wait, no, it does. No, it does. Earth is first element. Earth is first element. I thought for some reason the fire is before Earth. No, Earth is first element, then, yeah, so this order makes sense. Yep. Yeah, so this is the correct order. And then box droppers come at the very end. All right. So with that said, let's get into it. So these first 8 slots, those are spirits. So this slot would be Boltuga because Vesuvituga is here. What that immediately tells us is that there are 0 champions of Demeter or Dionysus in Earth in this set. Because there isn't any space for them. They would be coming before Hephaestus if previous orders are to be believed. Then we have 2 more slots between Vesuvituga and Dougie. I wouldn't be surprised if this was out of element champions for another divine, because we seem to be doing that more. Then after that, we have the fire section. Now Hephaestus is a focus divine, and I imagine Hestia is getting something. And so this might result in Earth only getting 6 Elestrals, because there's only 5 slots that could be champions before Noxid. So if we're certainly giving Hephaestus some stuff, and if we want to give Hestia some stuff too, if we want Hestia to have a shot of getting some in-element stuff, then they would be here. So that would take away from Earth slots. So like I think it's pretty likely Earth only gets 6 or 7 Elestrals. It's not a focus element. That makes a solid amount of sense. Dionysus also not getting an Earth Celestial makes enough sense because it is already getting the Havoc stuff in Lunar. Yeah. And also, I think it is pretty safe to assume we will see at least 1 Elestral for each of the champion archetypes, because we have yet to have a set of divine champions where that's not the case. Then these would be the next 2 stages of the Noxid line. And given Lotrax is very likely a 1 stage, that means that this should be a 1 stage after the Noxid line. Like, there isn't any other way for the math to work, unless Noxid is actually only a 2-stage line that doesn't have a 2-drop in it. If we have any in-element champions of Poseidon, they would have to be in these 2 slots, 25 and 26, right before the Starbit champion of Aphrodite. Water does look to be probably be getting snubbed. So this slot would be a hypothetical supernova, this number 28. Since Imperial is at 33 and Imperial is a 3-stage line, the champions of Hera stuff can't start any later than 31. In fact, that's almost certainly where it starts because Imperial is a 3-stage line. But if there are any in Thunder champions of Zeus, they would go to 29-30. And it is very rare. Like, 1 stages aren't so common. So, like, I would expect a 2-stage line at the very least for champions of Zeus, or like 2 1-drops. I think it is actually pretty likely that water only gets 4 Elestrals to its name in this set. And 29-30 go to champions of Zeus. Okay. So, champions of Hera is getting a lot. It seems. So, Phosphocell, being a titled line, should be coming, and being a 3-stage line, even ignoring that rule that we discovered live. Even ignoring that rule, it's still a 3-stage line, so it would almost certainly be the first of the non-champions. Which means that everything before would be champions. There could be some out of element champions, but I would be unsurprised if these are all Hera. Which means from 31 to 40 would all be champions of Hera, which would be 10. So for the counts that the previous new Divines got, we had 6 for Hestia in Firestorm, 7 for Hermes in the same set, and then both Aphrodite and Dionysus got 8 in their debut sets. It makes sense to me that they would increase the number of champions the new Divines get in their debut set as we go forward, because there's they have less of this block to work with, so they need more stuff up front. So there being 10 in Thunder champions of Hera would not be surprising to me at all. That is something that makes a lot of sense. However, I think the one thing that might disprove that is that Platypus is here. There's 4 more after it. And Platypus is a 1-stage line. Now, there's the possibility they give Platypus a new Ascension, and that's a champion of Hera, and then that's a 2-drop line. But I can't see there being 4 more 1-drops. Now, a few more 1-drops for sure, because Jolton is there, and Jolton's a 1-drop line. And we see Ash Rabbit in Jolton's art, so I imagine there's a champion of Hera Ash Rabbit as well, so that's another. But I can't see there being 5 1-drops of 1-stage Ascension lines for champions of Hera. It would be very appreciated, because the more 1-drops the better, because those tend to be what's most important in an Elestral stack, because that's what's going to compose most of your Elestral lineup, especially in a case like Hera, where we have a really powerful self-enabling big guy in Imperial that will also make all of our smaller guys big. So, like, I would like for there to be 5 1-drops, but I think it's a bit more likely that these 2 are some out of element stuff, champion stuff. And then moving on from that, so because Aeolus is the original divine for wind, we can assume that this Stramoth is where the wind champions begin. Of course, there are possibilities for out of element champions from earth, fire, water, or thunder to be here in 44 and 45, but I think it's fairly likely those end up being thunder guys. Could go either way, to be honest. Then between Stramoth and Rhinef, we basically have no information. There's 11 slots between there. We really have no clue what could be there. However, after Rhinef, pretty shortly after at 65, we have Celestleo. So that would mean that Champions of Ares start at 63 with the Nebuleo. So 61 would have to be Rhinosect. So 62 is basically guaranteed a one-off Frost. Unless they decide to give Rhinosect a new Ascension for it to be his 3-stage line, 62 would have to be a one-off. So that could be a new Morphrost. A new Morphrost would fit pretty cleanly into that. However, the other thing here is this is the only slot where we could possibly have a a native Frost champion, like a champion for Kion or no, just Kion. We don't have the second Frost one. So this is the only place where a native champion of Kion could be. Otherwise, a champion of Kion would have to be out of element. Because the Kion stuff should come after the Hermes stuff. Um, Based on the established collection number ordering. Um, then after Celestlio, we have Havocub down here. Since Havocub is Dionysus, it is very likely the beginning of the lunar cards. So we can pretty safely assume that Solar goes all the way down to 73, which gives us what, 11 slots, which is not a huge amount. Earth and Water got like 15, 16 Elestral slots in Livestream. So only 11 for Solar, which is one of the like headliner elements in this set. It's not a ton. However, it would not surprise me at all if there's out of element Champion of Ares stuff. Yeah. The other thing that 62 could be is it could be a one-off Solar Champion of Apollo card. That would also not be super surprising. But also there's the titled Tornation and Windjin. I would personally expect those to be Champions of Apollo. So the Champion of Apollo support in this set might just be that, and that would be in the win section. So that can return 62 to being a one-off champion for one of the earlier elements, or it could be a champion of Kion, or more Frost. Lots of possibilities there. So 76 we know is Drakid. So we effectively know everything up to 77. Then we have 78, 79, 80. This could be like a three stage Essential 9. This could be a 2-stage and then a 1-drop. Now that said, A-Drive did say not too long ago that there will be exactly 13 lunar cards in this set. Now that could include partial lunar cards that are categorized in other elements. We'll have to see, but as we'll get into with stuff later on with the runes, if we start at Havocub and end at Lumavale, that's 8 lunar Elestrals. It's very unlikely it's only that many. So we likely have at least one more lunar Elestral, maybe 2 more. And that matters because it eats into the potential slots for Earth runes. So we're probably only looking at like 1 or 2 Earth runes in this set. We also have no clue if Lumavale is a 1-stage. Because we have in the past gotten standalone 2-drops. Often they would later get a 1-drop added to their Ascension line, but it has happened in the past that we had a standalone 2-drop. So that could be the case with Lumavale. Given it's a creator card, that wouldn't be super surprising, but it could also have a 1-drop that they made. We'll have to see. No way of knowing until then. Then Hephaestus, we have three rune slots between Hephaestus and Hera. Both the fire cards and the water cards have to fit in there. That means to me that water is very likely only getting 1 rune, if any, because fire is likely where the titled Eruption is. I imagine it's where that is, and then Hephaestus also needs to get a signature rune. So that's like 2 fire slots eaten after Hephaestus. So that really only leaves 1 slot that could be water. Then this is easy. Thunder and wind are elements that are right next to each other. So this will be 3 runes for thunder. That's pretty cool. I think like an invoke rune that returns stuff is like kind of the exact sort of thing that Hera wants, because that's how you're going to enable Imperial ideally. So yeah, hopefully we see something like that. And seeing 3 runes here is like good reason to be hopeful. Then Aeolus. Aeolus is of course going to get a signature rune, so that eats one of these slots. So there's 1 slot that will either be another wind rune or it'll be a frost rune. So frost is also not eating well on the rune side. Then after Ares, we have Colosseum at 101. So because of the stuff we discussed with Hestia, there is decent reason to expect that all the Ares stuff would be categorized together first before any other solar stuff. But also stadiums come after artifacts. and stadiums come before invokes. So if those rules are being followed, then all three of these before the battlegrounds, should be either stadiums or artifacts, which gives us very good reason to believe that there will be 2 to 3 of within the names of each of Armament of Ares and Colosseum of Ares, which is very good for the versatility of that Ares effect. It kind of needs that for it to like be something worth using. Then I imagine after that we have like, I imagine it's something like 2 armaments, 2 Colosseums, or 3 armaments, 2 Colosseums. And then we, of course, need to have Ares' signature rune after that, which leaves space for 2 to 3 cards afterwards, which is why, like, I'm very certain that Lunar is getting more Elestrals, and those 13 cards aren't being filled out with runes, because like the positioning of Colosseum makes it so that like, okay, at most there's 3 slots for Lunar runes here. Regarding where the full arts start, I think Dugabase is probably the first one. This is the set that we've known for a while is going to be when they stop double upping on the box topper full arts. So the box toppers will only have those box topper full arts, and they won't have another full art in the set, which I am very happy about. But also because Dugabase is Earth, and the seemingly very small amount of Earth Elestrals in this set, it is very likely that Dugabase is the first full art. So that we are probably going to 105. That also is interesting because, with the exception of base set to Frostfall, every subsequent set transition has had the new set have more functional cards in it than the previous set. But with the functional new cards ending at 105, you subtract the spirits, that gives us 98. No, 97, sorry. 97. 97 functional cards. Lightstream had 99 functional cards. So this is the first time in a long time that the new set is going to have less new cards than the set before it, which is interesting. But it does like forecast that we've kind of like stabilized on set size. I think about 100 cards is like a pretty good set size. So, especially since we have massively increased the number of runes that we're printing in these sets. Like a good 1/5 of the sets are runes now, which is not how it used to be. I still think it would be good to have like a larger portion of the set, even a larger portion than this, be runes. Like I would like to have sets with like 30 runes in them each, because that is an area of the card pool that could use a lot of expansion. But yeah, not much else to say there. That is the information that we have based on all these collection numbers. A lot that we could glean from it already. And we'll only be able to narrow it down more as we get more reveals next week. But with that said, this is going to be Hunter Search, signing off.